Glad to have you back, and this is the final lap, the final lap of our program. And we did say that we were expecting a guest who has joined us this morning, one person who understands security like the back of his palm, and if you describe him as a security expert, you're very, very correct. Bright Eweka has joined us this morning. It's a pleasure having you this morning, sir. Good morning.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure being here.
Right. We're actually talking about the allegations of U.S. Congressman Scott Perry, who is not only a politician, but also a retired Army general.
Absolutely.
So one person who should know what he's talking about. He did allege that Usaid is funding some terrorist organizations, including ISIS, and of course, Boko Haram. And I'm just wondering, are you as worried as our Chief of Defense Staff, Christopher Musa, who expressed concerns about how international non-governmental organizations in Nigeria get to some conflict zones easily and access it in Nigeria where Boko Haram operate? Yet, you also find that sometimes the soldiers might not even know where they are. But INGOs do know where all this and assess these conflict zones, go in, they enter, and they come outside.
Well, again, thank you for having me once again. You have to understand that where we have conflicts around the world, there are rules that governs how the parties involved go about the conflict. And then there are organizations and individuals who are also considered neutral. And in spite of the conflicts, they are allowed access, sometimes unfettered access, to those conflict zones, to mostly on humanitarian grounds, to provide, as it were, comfort to victims of those conflicts, like the Red Cross, for example, and some of these international NGOs. Either they are taking medicines, they are taking health care, they are taking education to IDPs and things like that. So it's like that anywhere in the world. And no matter how fierce the conflict is, all the parties involved, whether you are a state actor or non-state actor, they know that certain organizations or individuals that represent those organizations are given some sort of opportunity to be in those conflict zones. In fact, they are mandated by international laws to protect them. Yeah. And so you find a reporter, journalists are in that category as well. You find a reporter who is in the front line, even though he's wearing the body armor, is clearly written press. So you don't target them as part of the parties to the conflict. But unfortunately, like we have heard, and by the way, the allegations are not new. They are not strange to many of us. You find that people who hide under these different platforms and guises end up doing things that are outside of their brief. For example, in the current conflict between Israel and Hamas, there have been this back and forth allegation that the United Nations is allowing Hamas terrorists to use their various bases as a launching pad against Israeli positions. And unfortunately, nobody said anything until Israel started targeting those places. And then there was global outcry. How can you target places that are considered, safe haven for
neutral?
So it happens. Whether, how true, to what level these accusations are or could be confirmed, depends on who is making the accusation and who is defending those accusations. But that is something we can discuss maybe another day. So,
but when you say how true, because again, while this story was making the rounds, I just remembered what played out when America was exiting Afghanistan. America exited and left a cache of armory right there for the Taliban. And juxtapose this with the allegation that they sponsor terrorism. With all those disclosures, yes, Boko Haram affects us directly and all of that. This further gives weight to it. However, if these allegations, so to speak, are authenticated, where does that leave Nigeria? How do we get some kind of respite? Because again, they've already created an ideology. It's no longer, Boko Haram has now become a potent ideological force, which will to take much more than just admitting that America is involved to really curtail. So where does that leave Nigeria? How do we, how does Nigeria respond when eventually this is authenticated and found to be true?
Well, the truth remains that Nigeria is not an isolation when we look at terrorism and counter-terrorism efforts. There are global alliances, often led by the United States, regarding global counter-terrorism or anti-terrorism efforts. And most organizations, most nations have a buy-in, directly or indirectly, to these global alliances. Because shortly after the 9/11 attack on U.S. soil, it became clear that global terrorism cannot be fought and successfully defeated by just a nation. And so you find that nations borrow a leaf or two from one another as part of their own bespoke approach to dealing with their own homegrown terrorism issues. So again, what that presupposes is that Nigeria is not going to reinvent the wheel in their approach to dealing with terrorism. They are likely going to be using some of these global strategies or approaches, which a lot of times can be both military, can be both civil approach. But what is important, however, is that every nation is or takes responsibility for dealing with these threats on their home soil. Excuse me, on their home soil.
Yeah.
And that what works for one nation doesn't necessarily work for the other nation. So what that means that you have to look at the peculiarity of your situation and craft your approach, yes, and develop your approaches based on the law that prevails in your land, based on how well it aligns with global best practice for things like this, so that in the end, while you are trying to deal with your homegrown problem, you are not also running foul of international laws and treaties and all that. That's one. Nevertheless, you have to understand that the enemies you are dealing with most times know you, but you don't know them. You mentioned Boko Haram, but today we are not dealing with just Boko Haram.
Yeah.
Boko Haram in the last 10 years have now morphed into several splinter groups, each of them having different global alliances. And so you find that with a situation like this, you have to now understand that you are dealing with a hydra-headed monster. And so you either make up your mind, we either deal with this, or we allow you to deal with us.
With hydra-headed solutions.
Yes, yes. There have to be a multi-dimensional approach to it. So having said that, the people you're dealing with also understand the limitations you have based on international law. And so they exploit it, okay? If you listen to what the Chief of Defense Staff said, some of the things he said, and has been trending on social media lately, you literally feel sorry for him and feel sorry for our forces in the front line, feel sorry for our nation. It looks as though their hands are tied. Should I defend myself and observe international law, or should I throw caution to the wind and deal with this monster? What should I do? Again, that's why I made reference to the fact that every nation takes responsibility for dealing with their own peculiar situation. Let us deal with the situation first. We'll discuss international laws later. This is what Israel is doing with Hamas.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't know who is providing subtle support and encouragement to the enemy by comments like this, and it provides a lot of impetus for these people to continue to do what they're doing, thinking that there won't be consequences. Of course, there are consequences. Okay, so that means, therefore, that no matter how whatever approach we decide as a nation to deal with our situation, we must understand that our national sovereignty is more important than what other nations think. The safety of our people is more important than any other emotional outburst that you may have arising from how we deal with the situation. But that doesn't remove the fact that we also need to be compliant and follow laws that govern this kind of situation. So it means, therefore, that as a nation, we must be firm. We must be very honest in our approach. A lot of times, a lot of political interference and ethnic and tribal sentiments affect how we respond to things like this, religious sentiments and things like this. So let the military do what they are trained best to do. They know what the law says. They know what applies anywhere in the world. Some of our troops have participated in international missions, helped to deal with issues like this in other countries. And so we know what it is.
Like
so they're well knowledgeable.
Yes. Their hands are tied, like you said. You even will feel sorry for them.
Yes, you know, because we want to talk about the hands are tied, because I watched the interview at different times of the CDS. And, General Musa, you could see from his body language, he's willing to. It's as though he's the man that, of course, you have the idea, the information before you, but to what extent can I speak before the people? That's why you also see that even during the time of President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, that was where the uprise of the Boko Haram thing took another level. And you hear the man. It's afterwards now we're beginning to see interviews when he said there were interference from the US. Of course, interference and all of these different things. But the question is, like you said, when are we getting to see? I think we've only seen the boldness of the people. We've only seen the boldness from the West African belt, where we see from the countries where we have the military in power. Those are the ones that have been bold enough, somewhat somehow, to say and speak to the foreign. We're not. This is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be ruling and doing with our own problem, within our own selves. That we've seen play out. But how can we be firm enough? Because it's not the first time we're hearing these things. A list was given to former President Buhari.
Exactly.
We're here.
About those who are directly financing
of these things.
What happened to that list?
What happened to the list? So the question now is, how firm can we? Because we're hearing that what you're saying, we have to understand the law, what applies, and how it can be applied, and be firm enough to ensure that you interpret it and go within the confines and stay. Let me ask this question. The government of the day, presently now, because that's where we are right now, do they have that willpower? Do they have that willpower to carry out in fairness, so that we have a stop of all of the different conversation? Because the CDS even said that if you do that, even wanting to interview and find out from these NGOs, there's a blockade.
Exactly.
So how can we deal with it? The government of the day, can they deal with this issue once and for all?
Of course they can. It's about matching action with words. It's not just speaking.
Absolutely.
When we are done speaking, let us match those words with actions. When everybody say, well, it's just a barking dog that cannot bite, that sends signals on its own. Again, I remember talking about actions or inactions that serve as impetus to these criminal organizations and even those who sponsor them. After all, X did it, nothing happened. So why should it be different with Y?
No consequences.
A did it and got away with it. Why should it be different with B and C? So even the Bible talks about how that when sentence against an evil work is delayed, then those who do it are all the more encouraged to continue to do it. It applies in our everyday lives as well. So what it means is that whether the current leadership of our country have the political will is a huge question that leaves a sour taste in the mouths of observers like us. Sometimes we have a lot of political interferences. We have a lot of religious and sometimes very mundane
alignments,
considerations that affect our ability to execute. If you take a look at our counter-terrorism strategy, you'll be amazed. We have one of the best in Africa, comparable to anyone in the world. I've studied them. The question would be, would we be honest enough to truly do this? Would the government provide the right funding, the right training, the right resources, locally and internationally, to help to build capacity for our troops to do this? I think we have the funds to do it. I think we have the desire to do it. Yes, but there are those who profit from conflict.
Yeah.
Some of them are embedded in, you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
most of them are within our system, some are outside of our system, who profit from conflict and who would rather have this continue for so long. And not to forget the fact that even within our internal structure, within our security architecture, a lot of compromises have been observed. And we've seen cases of generals in the army, 7 generals who are accused of diverting funds meant for equipment procurement or all kinds of scandals. So with all of that, that is not to say that it's all bad, but with all of that in the system, then the honesty, the integrity, the sincerity with which to prosecute these wars, these battles in the front line becomes questionable. So that doesn't mean that we don't have the capacity to deal with it. We do.
You did mention that America, or imply that America sits at the top of anti-terrorist initiatives globally. But we're beginning to see that they are a full part of the whole process. Now, if these allegations are proven to be true, do you think the world even has the capacity to respond? Yes, you did give an example of how Israel did respond to Hamas and all of that. But are we at a stage where we need some kind of response? And do we have the capacity to do that?
We do. We have the capacity. And I think that the time to respond should have been years ago. We are responding, but not with the intensity, with the vigor that it deserves. Again, because of all of these embedded interferences here and there. America, as it were, especially with these revelations, again, they have the pride of place in terms of leading this global counterterrorism or anti-terrorism efforts. But you also have to understand that America has a global policy. Some of them expressly stated in their governmental policies across the board, but others are clandestinely executed. But all of them promote their interests globally. And for example, the CIA is an agency of government which by law is not allowed to carry out their work on US soil. What does that tell you? That tells you that interest of the US government outside of their shore, who carries them out? The CIA. And the CIA has agencies that have a semblance of democratic posture, but carries out the interests of the US government following the directive or direction or guidance of the CIA. And the USAID is one of such NGOs. And there are many like that.
Okay. Finally, because we'll soon finish in the next few minutes or few seconds. Right. 2 things, and please be brief. How should the government address this? Should the government probe, Nigerian government now, probe these allegations, which some people are even saying is a statement of fact, not even allegations? 2, if they are found to be true, should the Nigerian government demand compensation from United Nations and all of those?
Well, these allegations, like I said, they are not new. I think that there have been several investigative panels set up with successive governments in the past. What we don't know is what happened to those panels. There were occasions where reports were produced, white papers and the rest of them, and many of them were swept under the carpet, or so it seemed, because nothing seemed to have come out from any of those initiatives. Yes, the government should indeed probe, especially with some of the weighty allegations from the Chief of Defense Staff. Let us at least look at them dispassionately. Let us at least question some of those suspicions and at least be sure that they are not just suspicions. If they are facts with verifiable data to back them off, let us ask questions. Let us hold people accountable.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we are going to be on this rigmarole. We will just keep on this, a lot of movement but no progress. And that's not what we want at this level. You have to understand that when it comes to terrorism across the world, it is constantly evolving.
Yes.
These foreign terrorist organizations are changing alliances here and there. Even within the local terrain, we're having splinter groups upon splinter groups. So if we don't take actions now, decisive actions now, whether by those who lead the campaign or those who formulate the policies or those who execute on the front line, we will never make any serious progress.
Okay. Always a pleasure having you on our program. Thank you so much, Bright Eweka, security expert.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
I
much.
hope you enjoyed yourself too.
I did.
Right, that's our bit today, Tuesday's edition of the award-winning Morning Flight on the award-winning station Love XP, where fade and entertainment meet. We'll be back again tomorrow, bigger, better, fresher, stronger, and hotter. My name is Shegun with a surname that has a rhythm, Adebo Wale.
My name is Christopher Siobe.
And my name is Paul Bassa, the ambassador.
And it is Bright Eweka.
Thank you.
We'll see you tomorrow, bright and early.